Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We're the show that really digs into those foundational texts, the ones that shape entire ways of thinking, and we try to make them clear and, relevant. This deep dive today comes from the religious studies arm of the Energy and Personal Excellence LLC program. And we should also mention that Sachin Karnik conducts daily satsang online, which everyone is welcome to join. Today, we're diving into Gacchia Vedanta. It's a tradition really focused on, ecstatic devotion. Our main source is a commentary on a really key 16th century text, the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu. That was written by Rupa Goswami. And we're also looking at some related texts that explore the metaphysics behind it, all things like Sakti Tattva and Dravya Abheda.
Yes, and it's really important to get a sense of who Rupa Goswami was. He wasn't just anyone. He was one of the main followers, one of the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, commissioned by Caitanya Mahaprabhu himself. Caitanya, in the 15th, 16th centuries, he brought this huge wave of Kaitsa Bhakti, really revolutionized it. But while Caitanya provided the inspiration and the core practice, it was Rupa Goswami who acted as the systematic theologian. He took that intense emotional experience and built this coherent, rigorous philosophical system around it. So this text, the Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, you can think of it as the constitution almost. It defines everything about devotion in this lineage, the processes, the states, the goal.
Right, the constitution. I like that. And the title itself, Bhakti-rasamrita Sindhu, it's quite a mouthful, but it seems like it tells you exactly where you're headed, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. The destination is packed right into the name if we break it down. Sindhu means ocean. Amanta is nectar, often implying immortality or divine sweetness. Rasa. Now, that's a crucial term. It's not just emotion. It's like an ecstatic experience, an aesthetic taste, the very flavor of a relationship, particularly with the divine. And bhakti, of course, is devotion.
So putting it all together.
You get the ocean, Sindhu, of the nectar, amant, of the ecstatic experience, rasa, of devotion, bhakti. It immediately tells you this isn't about just, believing something or following rules. The aim is a deep, overwhelming, blissful experience of loving God.
An ecstatic experience.
Yeah.
An ocean of it. Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive. It sounds like it's twofold. First, we need to really nail down what this highest form of devotion bhakti actually is, its definition, its unique qualities. And second, we need to explore the metaphysical underpinnings. You mentioned Sakti Tattva and Dravya Abheda. How does the nature of reality itself makes this kind of devotional relationship possible?
Exactly. We need to understand the practice and the philosophy that supports it, the what and the why, or maybe the what's and the how it's even possible. Let's start with the what's.
Okay. The definition. Rupa Goswami's definition of the highest bhakti. What does he say?
Well, the standard he sets is remarkably high, and it's quite distinct from many other paths. He defines the highest devotion, sometimes called Uttama Bhakti or Shuddha Bhakti, pure devotion as dedicated service to Kanan or Bhagavan, the Supreme Person. This service must be rendered pleasantly and affectionately, and here's the core point. It must be fundamentally devoid of desire for anything else.
Anything else. Wow. That cuts deep, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Because usually when people turn to spirituality, there's some desire involved. Peace of mind, maybe getting rid of suffering, finding answers.
Precisely. And Rupa Goswami draws a very sharp line here. This establishes what we can call the non-utilitarian principle. Pure bhakti cannot be used as a tool to get something else. It can't be mixed, mishra, with jnana, which is intellectual knowledge often aimed at achieving impersonal liberation, like realizing oneness with Brahman.
Right.
And it can't be mixed with karma, which refers to actions, especially rituals, performed to gain material results like wealth, health, or a good afterlife in heaven.
Okay, the karma part seems clear. Like praying for a promotion, that's using devotion for a material end. But the jhana part, that's interesting. If someone is deeply studying scriptures, meditating, trying to understand the ultimate reality, maybe even using devotional practices to help them focus, isn't that a valid spiritual goal? Why exclude that?
It comes down to the ultimate goal. In paths focused on jnana, particularly like Advaita Vedanta, the final destination is typically realizing the identity of the self, the Atman, with the impersonal absolute Brahman. It's about absorption, merging, losing individual distinction. For the Bhakta in Gacchia Vedanta, the ultimate goal is an eternal, loving relationship with the personal supreme being, Bhagavan. Service implies 2 distinct entities, the servant and the served. So if you're using devotional practices with the underlying aim of dissolving your individuality into the absolute, well, that's still seen as a subtle form of self-interest. You're seeking absorption for yourself, not relationship with the other.
Ah, I see. The goal shapes the nature of the practice. Even if it looks devotional on the surface, the underlying intention to merge makes it impure in this specific definition.
Exactly. It's considered covered or mixed devotion.
This really highlights the contrast with, say, Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. He talks about Ishvara Prachithana, surrender to God. A lot of people today might hear that and think, well, that sounds like devotion. How does Gashya Vedanta distinguish his bhakti so sharply from Patanjali's concept?
That's a classic point of comparison, and the difference lies in the function and the ultimate aim within each system. In Patanjali's yoga, Ishvara is described as a special, distinct soul, puru, untouched by afflictions and karma. Think of Ishvara as a perfect model or a facilitator. Ishvara Prachitana, surrender or dedication to Ishvara, is presented as one of the niyamas, the observances, and it's specifically recommended as a highly effective method for overcoming obstacles on the path and achieving samadhi siddhi, the perfection of meditative absorption.
So it's a means to an end within the yoga system.
Precisely. The ultimate goal in Patanjali's classical yoga is kaivalya, isolation or liberation of the individual consciousness from nature, prakriti. It culminates in svarupa avasthanam, the seer, the puru, abiding in its own essential nature. It's about realizing the self as the self, separate from everything else. So while Ishvara Prachidana involves God, its function within that system is primarily to help the individual yogi achieve self-realization and isolation. The focus remains on the liberation of the self.
Not on establishing an eternal loving relationship with God as a distinct supreme person.
Correct. The Gachia commentators would say Patanjali's Ishvara Prachidana might be a preliminary form of devotion, but because its aim is ultimately self-absorption, it falls short of Shuddha Bhakti, the pure, unmotivated love aimed solely at pleasing King. The Bhakta's prayer isn't help me achieve samadhi so I can realize myself, but rather, how can I serve you? It's a fundamental shift in orientation from self-benefit to selfless offering.
Okay, that definition is crystal clear now. It's incredibly demanding. This really sets the stage for understanding the 6 qualities Rupa Goswami attributes to this pure bhakti. You mentioned these aren't just random benefits, they're hierarchical and map onto the stages of practice: sahana, bhava, and prema.
That's right. These 6 characteristics are like proofs or inherent potencies of pure devotion. If true bhakti is present, these qualities will manifest. They unfold as the devotion deepens. Let's go through them.
First one, it destroys difficulties.
Yes. Klishagni is the Sanskrit term destroyer of afflictions or difficulties. This means bhakti eradicates papasin, negative karma, wickedness, misfortune, basically all the stuff that binds us to samsara, the cycle of birth and death.
Now, most spiritual paths claim to do this, right? Through good deeds or penance or knowledge. What makes bhakti supposedly unique or more effective here?
The texts argue bhakti's effectiveness lies in its ability to destroy the root cause, not just the symptoms. Karma exists in different states. There's prarabdha karma, the karma that has already started to bear fruit, like our current body and situation. Then there's aprarabdha karma, the stored up karma, like seeds waiting to sprout in the future. Many practices might mitigate or burn off some of this karma, but Gachya Vedanta emphasizes that pure bhakti goes deeper. It destroys not only the accumulated karma, but also the bija, the very seed or inclination vasana towards sinful action. It attacks the kleshas, the root afflictions like ignorance, avidya, egoism, asmita, attachment, raga, aversion, and fear of death, avinivesha, which Patanjali also identifies as the drivers of suffering.
So it's not just cleaning up past messes, it's fundamentally changing the tendency to make new messes, like pulling out the weed by the root instead of just cutting the top off.
Exactly that. Practices like austerity, tapas, or charity, dana, if done without devotion, might neutralize the results of past negative actions. But the texts argue they don't necessarily eradicate the deep-seated desire or tendency that led to those actions in the first place. Pura Bhakti, by constantly engaging the mind and heart with the all-pure Supreme Person, gradually purifies the consciousness itself. It dissolves the very psychological roots of negativity and self-centeredness that generate karma. The Bhagavata Pudrat, a key text, states that devotion burns up sins like a fire consumes fuel, leaving no residue.
Okay, that's powerful. Root-level transformation. What's the second quality?
The second is that bhakti bestows auspiciousness. The term is subhada, meaning giver of shubha, all that is good, beneficial, and auspicious.
So it doesn't just remove the bad, it actively brings the good. What does that look like?
It means that a pure devotee naturally develops all good qualities, things like kindness, compassion, truthfulness, peacefulness. They arise spontaneously as the heart purifies. And importantly, this auspiciousness radiates outwards. The devotee becomes pleasing to all beings, humans, animals, even, on the text say, inanimate objects seem to favor them. Why? Because there's no hidden agenda, no ego-driven manipulation. Their presence is inherently beneficial and non-threatening. They attract goodwill naturally.
Like a magnetic effect of purity.
You could say that, and a major implication, historically and socially, was the radical accessibility this implies.
Ah, right. You mentioned bhakti transcends typical restrictions.
Yes, this quality of bestowing auspiciousness is directly linked to the idea that bhakti is open to everyone, regardless of birth, social status, caste, or gender. In the context of 16th century India, where access to high Vedic rituals or deep Vedantic study was often restricted based on these factors, this was revolutionary. Rupa Goswami and the tradition assert that pure devotion instantly elevates anyone. Even someone considered an outcast, Kanla, becomes supremely worshipable if they have genuine devotion. Their internal purity, generated by bhakti, overrides all external classifications. Subha is an internal state that makes external status irrelevant.
So the auspiciousness isn't about gaining worldly status, but about an inner transformation that makes one universally venerable.
Precisely. It democratized the highest spiritual attainment.
Okay, third quality. This one sounds controversial. Bhakti trivializes mokha, liberation.
Yes. Mukha lagutakat. It makes mokha, the state of liberation sought by many other paths, seem laghu, or insignificant, trivial, like a piece of straw.
That's a huge claim. Liberation from the cycle of birth and death, the ultimate goal for yogis and Advaitins. Bhakti says that's nothing.
It's perhaps the most defining and audacious stance of Gacchya Vedanta. It stems directly from the emphasis on relationship. Moksha is generally understood to have different forms. The texts sometimes list 5 types. Living on the same planet as God, Solokya, having a similar form, Soripya, being in God's presence, Samipya, enjoying similar opulence, Sati, and the 5th, Sayuja, merging into the existence or body of God, usually understood as merging into the impersonal Brahman.
And the devotees have a problem with one of these.
They enthusiastically accept the first 4 types, as these preserve individuality and allow for a relationship for service. But they vehemently reject Sayuja, the merging.
Why? Isn't becoming one with the absolute, the ultimate non-dual realization in some schools?
Because from the Bhakta's perspective, merging means the end of relationship. If the lover merges completely into the beloved, who is left to love, who is left to serve, it extinguishes the very possibility of the dynamic exchange of rasa. The commentators are incredibly strong on this point. They quote scriptures where devotees say they would rather experience suffering in the material world while remembering and serving Klain than accept Sayuja liberation where that loving service is impossible. Some texts even equate Sayuja with a kind of spiritual hell because it eliminates the eternal function of the soul, which is seen as loving service.
Wow. So the joy of relationship outweighs even the freedom from all suffering that merging might promise.
Exponentially so. This leads directly to the famous analogy used to compare the bliss of bhakti with the bliss of realizing the impersonal Brahman.
The ocean analogy.
That's the one. The bliss derived from realizing one's own self, Atman, or merging into the formless Brahman, is compared to the amount of water held in the hoofprint left by a calf after it crosses a puddle. But the bliss derived from a loving relationship with Bhagavan, the infinite supreme person, is compared to the vast, limitless ocean.
So Brahman bliss is finite, tiny, whereas Bhakti bliss is infinite.
That's the idea. The Atman is an infinitesimal spark of consciousness. Its inherent bliss, when realized in isolation, is also infinitesimal. Bhagavan is the infinite source, Vivu. Connecting with the infinite source through love opens up an infinite ocean of bliss. Why settle for the hoofprint, however pleasant, when the entire ocean is available? That's the logic. To choose moksha, merging over bhakti, is seen as choosing the insignificant over the infinite.
Okay, that puts moksha in a very different light. Let's move to the 4th quality. Bhakti is difficult to attain. Sudurlabha.
Yes, Sudurlabha. Extremely difficult or rare to attain.
Now wait a minute. Didn't we just say it's universally accessible? Quality 2, transcending caste and gender, and the practices like chanting seem relatively simple compared to complex Vedic rituals or extreme yoga. So how can it be both easy and difficult?
That's the paradox, and the difficulty lies entirely in the internal state required, not the external actions. Performing the acts of devotion, chanting, hearing, worshiping might be relatively straightforward. Anyone can do them. The immense difficulty lies in achieving the purity defined earlier, that 100% selfless motivation, completely devoid of any ulterior desire, including desire for moksha itself or even the desire for spiritual powers, siddhis.
Ah, so the difficulty is the ego, giving up all self-interest, even spiritual self-interest.
Exactly. It's the ultimate hurdle. The soul's entanglement in samsara is characterized by beginningless, anadi, self-centered conditioning. We are deeply programmed to think in terms of what's in it for me, to completely eradicate that ingrained tendency to reach a state where the only desire is to please the divine with no thought of personal gain whatsoever. That requires a profound transformation of consciousness. It's not something that can typically be achieved by sheer willpower or mechanical practice alone.
It sounds almost impossible if left entirely to our own devices, given how deep that conditioning runs.
Which is why the texts emphasize the role of kapa, or grace. Pure devotion, Shuddha Bhakti, is often described as something that cannot be earned or manufactured solely through personal effort. Sadhana. It must be bestowed. The seed of that pure, desireless love is usually said to be transmitted through the mercy of Kanta himself or his pure devotees, like the Guru. Our effort in sadhana purifies us, making us receptive, like preparing the soil. But the seed itself comes from a transcendental source. That's why it's durlabha, rare, because it depends on obtaining that causeless mercy.
Okay, that makes sense. It's rare because it requires transcending the very core of conditioned existence. Moving on to number 5. Bhakti consists of a special concentrated joy, rasa.
Yes, Sandrananda Vijetma. It embodies a special Visha form of concentrated Sandra bliss. This quality essentially elaborates on why Mukha is trivialized.
It's describing the nature of that oceanic bliss we talked about.
Precisely. It's emphasizing that the joy of bhakti isn't just more bliss than Brahmananda, it's a different kind of bliss. Brahmananda, the bliss of merging, is often described as peaceful, static, undifferentiated. Bhaktianda, the bliss of devotion, is dynamic, variegated, relational, and deeply personal. It involves experiencing the rasas, the specific flavors or moods of relationship with Kon, like servitude, friendship, parental affection, or romantic love. The term sandra, concentrated, suggests an intensity and richness far beyond simple peace or absence of suffering. It's a positive, overflowing joy derived from the loving interaction itself.
So it's the difference between the quiet bliss of solitude and the vibrant, interactive joy of a deep, loving relationship.
That's a good way to put it. And because Kint, the object of this love, is infinite and ever fresh, Navyovana, the potential for experiencing new dimensions of this rasa is also infinite. It never gets old or static. It's an ever-expanding ocean of concentrated joy.
Compared to that, the static bliss of merging seems, well, limited.
From the Bhakta's viewpoint, yes. Limited and lacking the essential element of active love.
Okay, the 6th and final quality. This one feels like the ultimate culmination. Bhakti attracts Shruti.
Yes. This is perhaps the most astonishing claim. Pure devotion has the power to attract Tukun and, in a sense, even control the Supreme Lord, Shodi himself.
Control God. How is that even conceivable? The infinite, all-powerful source of everything. Controlled by the devotion of a tiny soul.
It's the supreme power of selfless love. The texts state that Kanta is Bhaktavatsala, meaning he is eternally partial to his devotees. He is conquered not by power, knowledge, austerity, or ritual perfection, but only by pure, unmotivated love, prima. Think about it. What can the infinite possibly need or desire? Nothing. The only thing that can truly capture the heart of the Absolute is the selfless love offered by the soul who wants nothing in return except the opportunity to offer that love.
So God is attracted to the quality of the love itself, the selflessness.
Exactly. He becomes captivated by the devotee's love. There are countless stories in the scriptures illustrating this. Kanam willingly allows himself to be bound by his mother Yashoda. He becomes the chariot driver for his friend Arjuna. He steals butter like a naughty child for the pleasure of his devotees. This isn't because he's weak, but because he chooses to reciprocate the devotee's love by submitting to their affection. He derives his greatest pleasure from these loving exchanges.
Is this related to the concept of Yoga Maya?
Very much so.
Yoga Maya is Keynes's internal spiritual potency that facilitates these intimate pastimes. The laws. It creates the atmosphere of familiarity and hides his overwhelming majesty and power, Aishvarya, so that devotees can relate to him in these intimate rasas without being paralyzed by awe. Under the influence of Yoga Maya, devotees might forget Kenki as God and treat him as their child, friend, or lover. And Kinta delights in this. This control isn't coercion. It's the natural loving submission of the divine to the purity of the devotee's heart. Pure love is the ultimate irresistible force. Okay, those 6 qualities paint an incredible picture of what pure bhakti is and what it achieves. It destroys negativity at the root, bestows all goodness, makes liberation seem small, is incredibly hard to achieve in its pure form, offers an infinite ocean of dynamic joy, and even attracts God himself. Now that's the goal, Prema. But for most of us, we're not there yet. So how do we get there? This brings us to the practical path, sadhana bhakti.
Right. Sadhana means, the practice, the discipline undertaken to achieve the goal. Since prema is the perfected state, sadhana bhakti is the process for the conditioned soul to cultivate that potential. The primary aim of sadhana is to purify the heart and awaken bhava, which is the preliminary stage of prema, like the first sprouting of that pure love.
And Rupa Goswami divides this sadhana practice into 2 main types, based on the motivation.
Yes, based on what drives the practice. The 2 modes are Vaidhi Bhakti and Raganuga Bhakti.
Let's start with Vaidhi. That sounds like rule-based.
Exactly. Vaidhi Bhakti is regulated devotion. Vidhi means rule or scriptural injunction. In this stage, the practitioner engages in devotional activities like chanting a certain number of rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra, worshiping the deity form, observing specific fasting days like Akaja, hearing and reading scriptures, associating with other devotees primarily because the scriptures and the guru instruct them to do so. The motivation comes largely from a sense of duty, faith in the process, and the desire for the ultimate goal, even if the intense, spontaneous love, raga, isn't strongly felt yet.
So it's the discipline you undertake before the passion really kicks in, the groundwork.
Precisely. It's the necessary training wheels. You follow the prescribed rules and regulations, and this consistent practice gradually purifies the mind and senses, weakening the grip of material attachments and the klishas. The eligibility for Vaidhi Bhakti is said to be faith, shraddha, and sukti, past pious credits or good fortune that brings one into contact with devotion. The person suitable for Vaidhi is typically someone who isn't excessively attached to worldly enjoyment, bhukti, nor excessively desirous of impersonal liberation, mukti, but has a nascent desire to serve God.
It's the structured path for purification. You do it because you're told it works, and through doing it, the heart starts to change.
That's the principle. The external regulations are designed to cultivate internal purity. By consistently directing the senses and mind towards kin, even if initially out of obligation, the natural attraction of the soul for God begins to awaken. It's like medicine. You might not like the taste, but you take it because you trust it will heal you.
Okay, so if Vaidhi is rule-based, what is Raganuga Bhakti?
Raganuga Bhakti is spontaneous devotion. It literally means following anuga, the path of raga. Raga here refers to a deep, intense, spontaneous absorption in and passion for kucha. This type of practice arises when the heart has been significantly purified through Vaidhi Bhakti, often over many lifetimes. The devotee develops a specific, powerful attraction to kucha, often modeled after the eternal associates of Bucha in the spiritual world, like the cowherd friends or the gopis. Their devotional activities are no longer primarily motivated by rules, but flow spontaneously from this overwhelming inner feeling, this intense longing to please and connect with kucha in a particular relationship.
So the motivation shifts from, I should do this, to, I must do this, I can't help myself.
Yes, it becomes an irresistible inner compulsion born of love. The practices might look similar externally, chanting, hearing, remembering, but the internal state, the driving force, is completely different. It's driven by an inherent constitutional attraction.
Now this sounds like a very advanced stage. The text probably warned against trying to jump into this prematurely.
Oh, absolutely. The warnings are severe. Attempting to imitate the external symptoms of Raganuga, displaying intense emotions, neglecting prescribed duties without having achieved the necessary internal purity through Vaidhi Bhakti is considered sahajiism, or cheap imitation. It's seen as spiritually dangerous because it can reinforce the ego under the guise of high devotion. The unpurified mind might mistake material or emotional sentimentality for genuine spiritual raga. Therefore, the tradition strongly emphasizes that Vaidhi Bhakti is the essential foundation. One must diligently follow the regulated path to cleanse the heart. Only when genuine raga naturally awakens as a result of that purification is one qualified to follow the Raganuga path authentically. You can't skip the steps.
It's like needing to learn scales and technique before you can truly improvise jazz. The structure enables the later freedom.
An excellent analogy. Vaidhi provides the structure, the discipline, the purification. Raganuga is the spontaneous expression that becomes possible once that foundation is solid and the heart is genuinely moved by love.
Okay, so we have the definition, the qualities, and the practical path. Sadhana with its Vaidhi and Raganuga stages. Now let's shift to the underlying reality structure that makes all this possible. How can an individual soul, jiva, even have a relationship with the infinite Bhagavan? What is the nature of reality according to Gacchya Vedanta?
This is where the metaphysics becomes crucial. The possibility of this eternal, loving relationship rests on a unique understanding of reality, often termed energetic monism. It's encapsulated in two core principles we mentioned earlier, Sakti Tattva and Dravya Beta.
Let's start with Sakti Tattva, the principle of divine energy.
Right. Shakti Tattva posits a pan-energetic ontology. What that means is that reality at its core isn't composed of fundamentally separate inert substances, like, say, mind and matter in Cartesian dualism. Instead, everything that exists is understood as an expression, a manifestation of the single conscious energy, Shakti, of the Supreme Being, Zoktiman. The entire cosmos, both spiritual and material, is not something created out of nothing or separate from God, but rather an unfolding, a transformation of God's own inherent potency. Think of reality as a continuous field of divine energy.
So God isn't just the creator who stands apart. He is the substance of creation through his energy.
In essence, yes, which leads directly to the second principle, Dravya Abheda. This literally means non-difference of Heda in substance, Dravya.
Non-difference in substance, meaning everything is ultimately made of the same stuff.
Exactly. At the most fundamental ontological level, there is only one substance, the conscious energy of Keen. The spiritual world, the material world, the individual souls, jivas, all share this single underlying reality. Now, obviously, they appear different. The spiritual world is pure bliss, the material world is temporary and causes suffering, the soul is an individual point of consciousness. So where does the difference come from? The system states that the difference is functional, praparakita, not substantial, dravyata.
Functional difference, not substantial difference. Can you give an analogy for that? The fire and heat one is common, but maybe something else?
Sure. Think of gold. The substance, dravya, is gold. But that single substance can be functionally manifested, yupara, as a ring, a necklace, a coin, or even gold dust. They all look different, they serve different functions, you interact with them differently. But underneath those functional variations, the substance remains the same, it's all gold. Similarly, Kenyad's energy functions differently when it manifests as the spiritual realm, pure consciousness, the material realm, consciousness veiled as matter, or the individual soul, an atomic particle of consciousness. But the underlying substance, divine conscious energy, is one.
Okay, that helps clarify. Functional modes of a single substance. And this whole idea rests on the relationship between God, Shaktiman, the energetic source, and his energy.
Absolutely. The theological anchor is the concept of Sakti Shaktiman Abheda, the non-difference between the energy Shakti and the possessor of the energy, Shaktiman. They are simultaneously one and different. Like the sun and its light. The light emanates from the sun, is dependent on the sun, yet it is also, in essence, the sun's energy. You can't separate them. Fire and its power to burn are another classic example. Shaktiman remains eternally complete and unchanged, even as his energy Shakti expands and transforms to constitute all of reality. The transformations happen within the energy, not to the source itself.
This sounds like it's navigating a very fine line between saying everything is God, monism, and saying God and the world soul are separate, dualism.
It is, and that's precisely why Gotvedanta's unique philosophical signature is called Asintya Vedabhada Tattva.
Asintya Beda, let's break that down.
Asintya means inconceivable. Beda means difference. Apeda means non-difference or oneness. Tattva means truth or principle. So it's the principle of inconceivable, simultaneous oneness and difference. It asserts that the relationship between Kinta and his energies, including the world and the souls, is paradoxical to the limited human mind. They are simultaneously one in substance, made of his energy, and different in function and personality. God is infinite, the soul is infinitesimal, God is the controller, the soul is controlled. The relationship requires distinction.
Inconceivable because our logic struggles to hold both truths, absolute oneness and real difference at the same time.
Exactly. Our mind tends to want things to be either A or not A. This principle says reality is both A and not A simultaneously, in different respects. God is one with his creation energetically, but distinct from it personally and functionally. This allows the system to maintain both the immanence of God, he pervades everything as its energetic source, and the transcendence of God. He remains eternally distinct, complete, and the supreme person. And crucially, it validates the reality of the individual soul and its potential for a real relationship with God.
And the way the universe comes into being reflects this. It's not an illusion, like in some Advaita schools, nor a completely separate creation. Correct. The specific theory of creation is Saktipariyama Vada, the theory of Vada of the transformation of energy, Shakti. It states that the universe is a real transformation, but it's a transformation of Kisha's energy, not of Kisha's essence or consciousness. Shaktiman remains unchanged. Think of milk turning into yogurt. Yogurt is a real transformation of milk, not an illusion of milk, but the cow that gave the milk remains unchanged by the transformation. Similarly, the cosmos is a real manifestation of divine energy, serving a purpose, but the Supreme Lord remains aloof from these transformations in his own eternal form. This affirms the reality of the world and the soul's experience within it while preserving the immutable nature of the Absolute. Okay, this metaphysical foundation, energetic monism, unity of substance, inconceivable oneness and difference, transformation of energy sets the stage for understanding the different realms of existence. You mentioned the ocean analogy as a way to visualize this.
Yes, the ocean of consciousness cosmogram is a very helpful way to picture the structure implied by Sakti Tattva. The ocean represents the single, unified substance get as conscious energy. The different zones or states within that ocean represent the three primary functional modalities of his Sakti.
Three main energies. Let's map them onto the ocean.
Okay. Imagine the vast, calm, luminous steppes of the ocean. This represents the Svarupa Shakti, Kudir's internal or intrinsic energy.
The depths. Eternal, peaceful, the core reality.
Exactly. This Svarupa Shakti constitutes the purely spiritual realm, places like Goloka, Vandavana, or the Vaikuntha planets. It's the Lord's personal abode. Its nature is pure Sat-Citananda, eternal existence, Sat, pure self-luminous consciousness, Sit, and infinite bliss, Nanda. There's no tinge of matter, ignorance, or suffering here. It's entirely transcendental. Its function is to provide the arena for Quincha's own eternal pastimes, Nityaleva. His intimate exchanges of love with his eternally liberated associates. It's where he experiences and expresses his own infinite fullness.
And you mentioned this internal energy itself has three aspects: Sandhini, Savet, Bluatini.
Yes, those are the three functional components within the Svarupa Shakti. Think of them as the threads that weave the fabric of the spiritual world. Sandhini is the existence potency. It maintains the spiritual forms, places, bodies, the very beingness of the spiritual reality. Savid is the consciousness or knowledge potency. It ensures perfect intuitive knowledge for everyone in the spiritual realm. There's no ignorance or confusion there. And Hladini is the bliss potency. This is the energy that generates and distributes the ecstatic joy, the ananda, that permeates the spiritual world. It's the energy of divine love and pleasure.
So the spiritual world is literally made of existence, consciousness, and bliss, actively maintained by these potencies.
Correct. And the highest synthesis of these three, especially the Hladini potency, manifests as prima, pure divine love. The whole internal energy is geared towards facilitating and maximizing that love.
Okay, so from the blissful depths, we move towards the surface.
Right. Imagine the surface of the ocean, especially where it gets turbulent, wavy, maybe even murky near the shore. This represents the Maya Shakti, the external energy.
The material world.
Yes, the Mayika Jagat. This is the realm governed by Maya. Its nature is characterized by change, impermanence, duality, and illusion. Avidya, ignorance. It's described as a kind of reflection or shadow of the spiritual world, or sometimes as the inversion of consciousness, where the inherently conscious divine energy appears as unconscious matter, Jok. It's where the soul experiences limitations, suffering, birth, and death.
But crucially, within this Suktitattva framework, Maya isn't some independent evil force, right? It's still Kens's energy.
That's absolutely critical. Maya is also a divine energy. It serves a purpose ordained by Kan. Its function is primarily didactic. It creates the conditions of illusion and limitation that allow the soul to exercise its free will and, through the contrast of suffering, to eventually realize its true nature and turn back towards the spiritual reality. Maya creates bondage by making the soul identify with the temporary body and pursue fleeting pleasures, thus generating karma. But this very experience of limitation is what motivates the search for liberation and love. It provides the necessary resistance for spiritual growth.
So the turbulent surface, while seemingly negative, is actually a necessary part of the system designed to redirect us towards the depths.
Precisely. It's real in the sense that its effects, suffering, learning, are real for the conditioned soul, but it's temporary and ultimately dependent on the spiritual reality it obscures.
Okay, we have the depths, Swarupa Shakti, and the surface, Mayakshti. What's the third energy? You mentioned droplets.
Yes. Imagine infinitesimal droplets of water, perhaps at the very edge, the shoreline, or maybe momentarily sprayed up from the waves, distinct from the main body but made of the same water. This represents the Ta'asta Shakti, the marginal energy.
Marginal, meaning on the edge. And this is the jiva, the individual soul.
Exactly. Taya means shore or bank. The jiva souls constitute this Ta'asta Shakti, positioned in a liminal or marginal zone, right between the internal spiritual energy, Svarupa, and the external material energy, Mayasa. This marginal position is key to the soul's nature and function.
What is this soul's essential nature then, according to this?
The jiva is defined as sito. Sit means conscious, like Karnik, but at means atomic, infinitesimal, minute. So qualitatively, the soul is one with God, made of the same conscious, eternal, blissful substance, Satchitananda. But quantitatively, the soul is infinitesimally small, while God is infinitely large, Vibhu.
And that difference in quantity, that smallness, is significant.
Extremely significant. It's the basis of the soul's marginal nature and its potential for both bondage and liberation. Because the soul is conscious, it has innate free will, often termed svatantrata bhuja, the seed of independence or freedom. However, because it is infinitesimal, its consciousness and freedom are also infinitesimal. This means the soul is inherently susceptible to being influenced or overwhelmed by the vastly powerful energies of either Maya, if it looks outward towards the material surface, or Svarupa, if it looks inward towards the spiritual depths.
So being marginal means having the capacity to choose which energy field to align with.
Precisely. The Tatastha Shakti is the locus of free will and the pivot point of existence. The soul, from its marginal position, has the eternal, albeit tiny, freedom to choose its orientation. Choose Gatant and service, Bhakti, aligning with the Svarupa Shakti, and experience eternal bliss. Choose independence and sense gratification, aligning with the Maya Shakti and experience the cycle of birth and death. The entire cosmic drama unfolds around this choice point of the marginal energy.
So the spiritual journey isn't about becoming something new, but about reorienting ourselves back to our original nature within this energetic continuum.
Exactly. It's not about external travel from a material place to a spiritual place, fundamentally. It's about an internal shift in consciousness, a change in orientation, or you could say vibrational alignment. Since reality is one unified energetic field, Dravya Peda, spiritual realization means consciously attuning ourselves back to the frequency of the Svarupa Shakti, moving from the turbulent, fragmented consciousness of the surface back towards the unified, blissful consciousness of the depths, while retaining our individual identity as a loving servant, a distinct droplet.
And the paradox is resolved because the soul, this citadone, finds its ultimate fulfillment not by trying to become the ocean, merging, but by choosing to eternally relate to the ocean surface, which allows it to experience the ocean's infinite bliss without losing itself.
That is the perfect summation. The system presents this non-fragmented, energetic cosmology where everything is divine. Bhakti is the natural process for the jiva to reclaim its inherent function as a particle of love, choosing the dynamic joy of relationship, beta, over the static piece of absorption, and thus accessing the infinite ocean of rasa that is Bhagavan.
That's a remarkably coherent and, well, beautiful picture of reality and our place within it.
It is. It integrates ontology, cosmology, theology, and spiritual practice into a single unified vision centered on divine love.
So let's wrap this up. We've explored Rupa Goswami's definition of pure bhakti in the Bhakti Rasamrita, a Sindhu, selfless, desireless service. We've seen its 6 defining qualities, culminating in its power to attract Khan himself.
We've looked at the path of sadhana, moving from regulated practice, vaidhi, to spontaneous love, raganuga. And we've grounded it all in the metaphysics of Sakti Tattva and Dravya Peda, the understanding of reality as a unified field of divine energy, with the soul as a marginal particle choosing its alignment.
The synthesis seems to be that the material world, Maya Shakti, isn't just a mistake or an illusion, but a purposeful, albeit temporary, environment, a sort of divine classroom, maybe. Designed through contrast and challenge to help the soul appreciate and choose its true home in the spiritual realm, the realm of love.
That's a very good way to frame its function, yes, a didactic veil.
Okay, so if that's the case, if the Nayushakti is this purposeful, energetic field designed for learning, hey, here's a final thought for you, our listener, to take away and really mull over.
How does truly internalizing this idea that every single thing you experience, every person, every challenge, every joy, every bit of suffering is actually a manifestation, a functional expression of Kutusa's conscious energy? Supi. How does that fundamentally change how you might approach your life right now? If even the difficulties are part of this divine energetic fabric serving a purpose, how does that shift your perspective on struggle, on relationships, on your own reactions? What does living with that constant awareness potentially unlock?
A profound question to contemplate, and for anyone interested in exploring these concepts further, perhaps through engaging in practice like satsang. For more information, please do contact Sachin J. Karnik. His email address can be found in the description box associated with this deep dive.